Welcome, dear listeners, to broadcasts from elsewhere. We talk about media you may not hear about elsewhere. I'm Enigma, and I'm your host. And of course, we're still in the Christmas season right now, or the holiday season if you do not celebrate it. And today, I have, kind of a bad one, honestly. Today we are covering the 1984 horror movie, Don't Open Till Christmas. It's basically like a slasher, except all the victims are guys in Santa costumes. You know, like a mall Santa or something of that like. See, the premise of Don't Open Till Christmas is that there's a psychopathic killer roaming the streets of London. But he only kills people who are dressed like Santa Claus. Now, you'd think that would cause, like, mass hysteria, and that, like, people would, maybe stop wearing freaking Santa Claus outfits. But no, it doesn't, for some reason. Because this guy still has plenty of Santas for the pickings. This movie is kind of a bit of a mess, in my opinion. Like, it's fine. It's got an okay story and a nice, like, sort of mystery, even though the twist is kind of obvious, in my opinion. But it's just kind of weirdly paced. It's not as really that slow. It can be, but it's not that bad. The problem to me is that since none of the characters that are being killed are characters that we care about, except for one later on in the movie, you don't really have. They just go from a character-driven plot that'll be following, some of the main characters, and they'll just cut to the killer just randomly killing another Santa Claus who just happens in his way, and it just feels very awkward. And I've also found, when looking up some stuff about this movie, that the production for this movie was rather halted. It took almost 2 years to actually make it, not because of any kind of budgeting or other issues, but because the director and one of the starring actors, which is the same person, left the film for a good while. And he finally did come back in time for them to shoot the ending and whatnot, but it still screwed with it a lot. But Edmund Purdom is the director for this film, but he also plays one of the main roles, which is Inspector Harris, who's, like the main cop trying to track down the killer, Which, kind of odd that the, self-insert character would be that pertinent to the plot. I mean, yeah, the self-insert character from, Elfette Saves Christmas, for example, was pretty important to the plot, I guess, as well. But in his character's case, he was only there for about half the movie, whereas Harris is around for the entire film. So, it just feels a little odd to me. But, regardless of all that, if you do want to check it out before listening to the rest of this podcast, you can check it out on Shudder. It was on Tubi, but it seems to have been taken off, so, yeah. You can watch it on Shudder, or you can probably rent it on several other services if you want to. Personally, it's not really worth that much every time, if you ask me. It's an okay film, but it can be kind of boring at points. And yeah, it's also very I don't know how to describe it, but you'll see if you listen. So let's get into the plot here then, why don't we? Spoilers ahead, of course. We start off with a Santa Claus in the alleyway, looting for his girlfriend, ? Hard to say, as when she does arrive, they get into a car and immediately start, getting it on, basically. So, my guess would probably be more likely it's an escort or something. I don't know, it just seems like things are going pretty damn fast there, Regardless, then we, as the camera, start to move towards the car, and it becomes apparent that we are the killer's, POV. Which is a little strange considering the fact that we started up this scene with him, sitting against the wall, not that far from the camera, in the foreground. Did he just sit there with this random-ass man standing there? And then while this random fucking dude was standing there, just still go in the car and fuck this chick, what the fuck? Either way. So, in the POV, we watch him circle the car until Santa Claus man gets upset and jumps out of the car, starts to yell at him a bit. We see the killer whip out a knife. He stabs him in the gut just once, though. Stabs him in the gut, and I guess that's enough to kill him somehow. which it shouldn't be, but sure, why not? Because it's almost instant. It's not like he just sits there and bleeds out and dies. When he does do that, he just does it quietly, but I doubt you would do that quietly. You could yell for help or something, Regardless, the woman also gets out, tries to run away, but he backs her into the wall and stabs her as well. Also in the gut. That's one thing right there also. This movie's kind of lazy as far as kills go. There's a lot of those gut stabs that shouldn't be deaths, but they are deaths. It's almost like the blade is fucking enchanted or something. It's like, come on. A single stab in the gut is not gonna always kill somebody. Like, come on. Anyways, then we get a nice little title sequence, opening credits sequence type of deal, which I actually really liked. It's a little figurine, or maybe it's a candle, perhaps, I'm not really certain, of Santa Claus, but he's slowly burning away and melting. To me, it reminded me a lot of the opening sequence for Halloween, because, they have the whole jack-o'-lantern that slowly burns as the credits roll. Seeing as Halloween came out in 78, it very well could be a homage to Halloween. Once we get back to the actual movie, we're in a Christmas party, but it's a Christmas costume party, which I don't believe is a thing, but who am I to judge? Perhaps it's a British tradition or something. Who knows? Anywho, we watch a young lady who will be one of our protagonists, bring her father out with his makeup for the Santa Claus costume. So your father's supposed to play Santa Claus and give out some gifts and whatnot to the crowd, So once she gets him ready and they come out, she comes out with her boyfriend and her father together. And father does a little speech about oh, ho, 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 I'm Santa Claus, I'm gonna give you presents and stuff, Which must be a really nice party to actually go there and actually get a fucking present. Like, maybe it's a white elephant gift, I don't fucking know. They don't ever say, but it's still very strange about a costume party, because they're wearing, Halloween-esque costumes almost. I don't know. It seemed weird. But anyways, but he doesn't get to give any gifts out, because a spear, like an actual fucking spear, just goes through his head while he's up there they have a little stage for him. While he's up there on stage, and he goes out, it goes through his neck, to the back of his neck, out through his mouth. You can see the blade coming out of his mouth, basically. So of course he's dead, and the daughter's boyfriend, he runs off because he had heard some whisperings earlier from some of the partygoers about a man with a shrunken head mask, who everyone was kind of getting creeped out by, apparently. So he runs off to find that costume, that person. But when he does find what he thinks is that person, he rips the mask off, and it turns out to just be a decoy. It's just like a little plank of wood or something. It's really stupid. But obviously he's gone, and so now we flash forward a little bit to the next day, where we meet our two cop protagonists that we have in this movie. We look at the Scotland Yard, of course. It's London, so gotta have Scotland Yard in there somewhere. Anywho, their names are Inspector Harris and Sergeant Powell, and the two of them are getting ready to go speak to Kate, the daughter of the victim from last night, and Cliff, her boyfriend. Inspector Harris right away kind of seems to think that maybe the father was killed for the inheritance, which is an odd thing to guess. Now, he does mention that, of course, Kate would have been the sole beneficiary for the death of her father. So he thinks that maybe she made the boyfriend do it, and that they're trying to get it for inheritance. Don't worry, though. This does not come back up, and it has no need to even be brought up at all. Except for the whole, misdirect of them trying to get us to suspect Cliff as the killer. But it doesn't really make any difference. So they go over to their home, and they have a brief talk about it. And then the inspector suddenly decides to let her know, yeah, there's been a bunch of Santa Claus murders, happening recently. So, it's not because he has any enemies or anything like that, it's because he was dressed like Santa Claus. It's so if you knew this, then why did you think it was the boyfriend that killed him? Because Kate seems surprised when she hears this information, which to me means that it probably wasn't fully public knowledge. Yes, we do see a newspaper spouting this fact, which also causes some continuity issues to me, but we'll get into that in a minute here. But, considering the fact that she didn't know, and that the boyfriend didn't know, this seems to suggest that it's not fully common knowledge that Santa Clauses are being killed. Even though it should be, considering it's 1984, and the only way you can get your information is through a newspaper or a news report. And we do see newspapers, as I said. I do not see a news report that I remember, but I would not be surprised if there was one, because, I mean, how are you not going to get a news story out of, that? Regardless, we then go from that scene after she tells her, make sure you let me know if you remember anything else, or if you, all that kind of stuff, and he always tells you to keep in touch with her. So, we then, on the streets of London, get to watch another Santa murder that has no connection really to the story other than the actual killer himself. And so this one is a Santa Claus who's selling chestnuts, fitting I suppose, and our killer creeps up behind the Santa Claus and he chokes him with a cord for a little bit before dropping him onto the grill that he was staying in front of, the chestnut grill that he was using to be a vendor, and he lets him burn there. He burns his face, lifts it up, throws him back down, makes him catch fire and all that stuff. And we do see a brief glimpse of the killer, but naturally he's of course wearing a mask, so, what are you gonna do, right? Doesn't matter though, the killer is still obvious once we do meet the character that will become him, but still, I'll let you guys know when we actually get the reveal though. But, so yeah, we do see him, but like I said, he's got a mask, and the mask that this killer uses is a translucent mask that covers his whole face, but still kind of obscures his face, you know what I mean? It's kind of like because of the fact that it's translucent and whatnot, it still has some way of warping his face. To me, his face looked more like a mannequin than a human. It's very plastic, which I guess makes sense considering the translucent mask. Anywho, back at Harris's home, he gets a package labeled with the label, "Don't open till Christmas." And it's a wrapped gift box. So his housemaid, I believe she's supposed to be, takes it in, she lets him know about the package as he's about to leave the home, and decides to actually listen to the label and not actually open it till Christmas. Speaking of which, newspapers I mentioned earlier claim that there's 3 days till Christmas, but this movie covers about 5 days worth of time, it seems, yet the very final part of the movie takes place on Christmas Day, so bit of a continuity issue. Anyways, next we meet a man who claims to be a news reporter by the name of Giles. He makes a call to the police office, to the Scotland Yard, and he talks to Sergeant Powell. He basically tries to convince Powell to try to solve the case himself, cut out Inspector Harris and just solve the case by yourself, because then you can get your promotion. Killers usually have like a fake desire to be caught, or maybe even a real desire to be caught, but it does seem odd to call the Scotland Yard, tell them you're the killer, not even tell them you're a killer, but just randomly tell them that, like, hey, you should solve this yourself. And if it's not clear, yes, Giles is the killer, and it is very obvious because he's so suspicious and weird and everything. Now, we may not learn this twist until much later. Anyways, he tries to get some more information out of him, but he hangs up, so it doesn't matter. And another Santa Claus murder happens. It doesn't matter at all. Next day, Kate is wandering through the streets of London, on her way home, I imagine, but Giles just happens to find her. He tries to ask some questions. He, of course, keeps up the whole ruse that he's a news reporter, but he tries to ask her some very personal questions about the night when her dad was murdered. She won't answer his questions because, she's so upset and whatnot, and because she tells him you'd be better off talking to the police. Later that day, we meet another friend of Kate, or rather a friend of Cliff's, I should say. His name is Jerry. He says he's a photographer, and we'll learn just what kind of photographer soon here. It's not a bad kind, but it's not exactly the kind that Kate was probably expecting. Jerry and Cliff end up going out for drinks, and Jerry invites him to drop by the studio with Kate at some point, some pictures and whatnot. So he agrees, and later that night, we see Jerry and his model, her name is Sharon. So him and the model are already busy getting some pictures taken. And here's where we learn exactly the kind of photographer he is, as pictures he's taking seem to be pin-up or nude photos of this lady. So clearly he's doing photographic photo shoots. Same. Once Cliff and Kate arrive, Jerry, and even Cliff, try to persuade Kate to also take some pictures in the nude, of course. She is, of course, not wanting to do this, because that's fucking creepy, and also very pushy on his part, because he just keeps trying. But she finally storms out when she sees Jerry holding a Santa Claus costume for her, or one of the other model to wear. She storms out saying he's insensitive because of the fact that her father just died, of course, in a Santa Claus outfit. But for some reason, Cliff decides, rather than run after her, he'll just stay in the studio with Jerry and watch the rest of the pictures get taken for the other girl. That night, we see Cliff and this model girl kind of flirting a bit, and she tries to seduce him. She pulls out her tits and is playing with him because she's wearing a Santa Claus robe outfit, but nothing underneath that. But Cliff sees some cops nearby and says, we have to get out of here because, decent exposure, blah, blah. So he tries to make a break for it, but the door he just came from is locked, so he's still able to run away, though. But the model, unfortunately, is not as fortunate. But the model, in this case, is not so fortunate. She runs down an alley and runs straight into the killer. Upon seeing her, he almost seems to want to kill her because of the fact that she's wearing a Santa Claus-esque outfit. But instead, he takes out a razor and he starts to basically trace her body with the blade and down the torso. Doesn't do anything about it, though. He just does that, puts away his knife, and runs away. So, oh well, yes. The next day, Harris and Pal go to visit her. Her name is Sharon, by the way. We've done that in this area. And she's not really able to help too much. She just tells them, he wore a mask, and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, we have yet another Santa Claus on our hands. This one is trying to go to a peep show. This peep show, how it works is that you can apparently go to a glass booth, talk to a lady, and she'll do basically whatever it is you want within reason and with the actual money that you pay. Now, before this Santa Claus can have any real fun, he is unfortunately killed he's actually killed via neck stabbing while still having all his little horny dreams. Okay, back at Cliff and Kate's, Cliff has his hand wrapped up, and he claims it's from having to punch out Jerry because of the whole stunt he pulled with trying to get Kate to take pictures, which you could have done that when it happened rather than wait basically all night to do it, but sure, whatever. Anyways, Harris also pays him a brief visit. He lets them know about the attempt on Sharon's life, and of course he alludes once more that he suspects Cliff even more now. It wasn't enough with the whole inheritance part. Now, he was there on the scene with Sharon right before she was almost attacked. So of course it looks suspicious when he run away, and then suddenly there's a killer. But regardless. So Kate, while Harris is there, asks him for a way to contact him privately so that she can contact him even if he's off the job, basically. So he gives her his phone number to his home, to his actual home. Meanwhile, back at the yard, we see Giles has broken into the police office, basically. He's rummaging through one of the desks. Now, to be fair, he didn't technically break in. One of the other officers let him in, which is stupid of them, but sure, whatever. I guess it just goes to show how low-key things were back in the 80s, security-wise. Sergeant Powell walks in, sees him, and he tells him that, because remember Giles had tried to pretend to be a news reporter in the cult before. And Powell lets him know, I contact the news station and they don't know you. And then he goes on and says, like, well, you said you had some information, so why don't you tell me what you know about the killings? But Giles pretty much just completely ignores that order, basically, and just tells him that he needs to keep an eye on Harris for some reason. So Giles leaves, but Powell orders some cops to follow him. Then, on the streets later, we see Harris walking through the streets of London, and he's being pursued by somebody, and it turns out to be Powell. So I guess it's that warning from Giles did not go unnoticed. Unfortunately, Powell loses him in the crowd, but he does have him followed later. And then we get another Santa killing scene, because, of course, that's what the movie's about, but I just noticed that it feels like the Santa scenes are completely disconnected. Like, you could put them anywhere in the movie, and they'd still be, same thing. Like, they don't connect to the story that much. Yes, they help to show that the killer's still at large and everything, but it doesn't feel right, In a normal slasher movie, you would have, established characters that you're worried about, or at least you know that they're gonna die, or possibly could die. And, you get that, adrenaline pumping, and you're like, oh my god, they're chasing Stacy or whoever, and they're gonna get her or something, but, sometimes they escape, you have that whole Final Girls thing, where if, they're the main character, they're definitely gonna make it, and all the other people will die, but they'll live, But with this movie, it's just, these characters are complete strangers to us, we don't know them, we have no reason to really care about them, because half of them are drunk, and, as soon as you see somebody in a Santa Claus costume, you know they're gonna die, so there's no point in even thinking for a second, oh, they can make it out of this, they'll be okay, because they're just gonna die. There's no point in even rooting for them, or even anything. It's just annoying to me. Anyways, this Santa Claus is once again drunk. After some shenanigans with a bike, he ends up running away into a building. This one is very strange, because in this building there's a bunch of these weird statues. It starts off kind of biblical, there's a statue of Adam and Eve framed on a doorway. On the framing of a doorway, I should say. They're sticking out the walls, the statues. The next room has a bunch of statues depicting what looks to be a scene in hell, as there appears to be a Satan figure with pitchfork and whatnot. He runs off to the basement, and then there's some more mannequins and whatnot, statues down there that all seem to be representative of different torture and execution styles. I don't know what the fuck this fucking building's supposed to be. Maybe it's a museum or something? Who knows? We're not fucking told, and it doesn't fucking matter. Because eventually the killer chases him down and stabs him in the gut, and he dies. Because that is apparently the only way you can die in this movie, is just to be stabbed in the gut. That is apparently the fucking one-touch death that you get. So dumb. So back at the yard, the head of police has decided to put out some police decoys to help catch the killer. So we're gonna have policemen in Santa costumes. But that's not it. Now we go back to some more freaking Santa Claus murders right after that. And these ones are just really lazy. They get kind of killed with some glass bottles. He stabs one in the eye with a glass bottle, and it looks like claymation almost, the way they decided to do the eye makeup to make it look like the eye was kind of sloshing around or whatever. It's weird to describe. I don't know how to describe it. It's like the eye starts to fall off the face or something, or into the bottle. It's but it looks really fake at this point, and it's really showing its age or showing its budget, one of the two. So now you may remember the girl from earlier, the Peep Show booth girl. So you see, since she saw the man die in front of her, the Santa Claus that was doing Peep Show die right in front of her, they figure she must know what the killer looks like, we can get her to ID this guy. So they have her at the yard, and she tries to describe it, but the only thing she can remember, because of the mask, is his smiling eyes, which has got to be the worst lead you give anybody. And the guy says oh, it's not much, but it'll help. It's no, it doesn't. It fucking does not help. Smiling eyes. People can make their eyes smile. That's the thing. it's not like a completely alien thing to do. You can have your eyes smile. Like if you, I don't know how to describe how to do it, but it's possible. Either way, they want to give her a ride home and have her like surrounded by police and whatnot at her home so that she can get, so she can be safe. But she instead decides that she'll just go back to her booth. So she leaves without telling anybody at the station, because that's obviously the best idea in the world, right? And of course, you can guess who pursues her. The killer. But she makes it all the way back to her booth, and the killer comes up and pretends to be a customer. Like I mentioned earlier, it's like a glass booth type situation, so she's behind glass, and they have to talk to, and the customer will be talking to them, kind of like how you talk to an inmate at a prison. Pick up the phone, and talk to them between glass. It's that, basically. So, he pretends to be a customer, and they chat for a moment, but then she looks at his eyes, and I guess she sees the smiling eyes that she claimed to have seen before, and she's a little like, huh? And he breaks the glass and starts to try to attack her. Now, she runs away, but he's able to catch her rather easily, too. And he takes her to this bedroom, or studio apartment, or whatever it's supposed to be, and yes, it's also where he lives, so either he just happens to live close by to this place, or there was a transition we didn't see, or something. Either way, she's caught. So, he chains her up and tells her, basically, you sit here and think about what you did. He literally says something like that. But he also tells her that he will be killing her, regardless. So, then we have another Santa Claus killer. This one is yet another drunk Santa Claus. Just half of these victims are just fucking drunk anyways. And also, why are there so many drunk Santa Clauses wandering through London? What in the actual fuck? What are you guys doing here? First of all, you already know that, there's a killer in those, I would imagine. Now, maybe they don't know because just like how Kate didn't know until it was already too late when her dad got killed. But still, why are there so many drunk Santa Clauses? Is this a London thing? Is this normal? Doesn't feel normal. I don't know. Anyways, this one runs into a concert hall while band's performing. Gets murdered backstage. The singer finds him during her performance, I believe, and screams, and then we go to the next scene, because you know what? That scene didn't fucking matter anyways. So, just like every other killing scene in this fucking movie. So, Sergeant Pell pays a visit to Kate, and she tells him she suspects Harris might be having something to do with these murders, perhaps. See, we found out a little earlier when Kate tried to call Harris, he was actually off visiting somebody in an asylum. And she also goes on to say that Harris appears to have changed his name. You see, she checked birth records for an Ian Harris name, and she found nothing. So, it's very concerning to her. It does not concern Pal at all, though, which is surprising, because you would think if he learned that his partner just doesn't exist in, the, birth records, that would maybe raise some red flags. But no, he's just like, so the man changed his name. What of it? And it's like, what do you mean, what of it? People usually change their name if, either one, they're trying to hide something, or they hate their name. But when you've been getting messages from a random stranger that's saying, keep an eye on your partner, and you get a lady who's also suspicious of him, maybe you should wonder a little bit about it. But no, he doesn't. He leaves. Another pointless Santa kill in the bathroom this time. The blood looks like red paint. It's like the worst effect in the movie, and then we move on. Santa kills were honestly the worst part of the movie, which is kind of funny considering, usually the kills in a horror movie, or at least in a slasher movie, are usually the best or most interesting part. But no, not here. So Kate goes to visit Harris in his actual home, and they go out for a little, dinner date thing, and she asks him some, questions and whatnot. They go to, a really fancy, restaurant, one of those ones where you have to have, a suit to enter, so it's like the really fancy shit. Anyways, later that night, after she's gotten home from her little dinner date, Giles has broken into her home, and he starts to threaten her, and then she reveals that she's worked out some things about Harris. So she figured out at least 2 things. 1, Giles is Harris's brother, and 2, Harris had changed his name because of the fact that Giles had gotten committed to an asylum, and he was basically ashamed of it. One odd thing I wanted to note, though, is that Harris, you want to know what he changed his name from? So his name is Ian Harris right now, correct? His old name was Ian Harrison. He literally just took off 2 letters. Like, you couldn't have, had any imagination at all? You couldn't have just been like, oh, I'm Ian King now, or I'm, anything. Just the least creative change whatsoever. Anyways, Pal tries to call her at her home because she had tried to get hold of him after their meeting at her home, but he was away from the yard, so he didn't get the call. But Pal tries to call her back now, and she's trying to answer, but Giles starts to strangle her with the garland that she has decorating her room, or her living room rather than the room. Anyways, so she gets the phone off the hook, but doesn't manage to answer. But Giles once again stabs her in the gut, because of course, like I said earlier, Giles is the killer, and he does reveal that he only killed her father because of the fact that he reminded him of Christmas. We do see a brief flashback later on about why he hates Christmas, but it's way too late in the movie, honestly, for me to even care at that point. But, anyways, Pal and his partner rush over to her apartment, but of course she's already dead. Pal rings an associate at the yard and finds out that Harris did not leave his apartment. He says he didn't leave his apartment all night, which is false because he left his apartment to be out with Kate, but I guess they mean after he got back home. Anyways, Pal, I guess, somehow has figured out that the killer was running away and is pursuing Giles through a junkyard now because, sure, why not? Giles is able to rig up some kind of thing with some jumper cables and one of the cars that's sitting there, and when Pal tries to open one of this car door and search it, he gets electrocuted. So, maybe he's dead? I don't know. It feels like he should be dead. They don't ever see him after this, so possible. Anywho, Giles returns back to the same place where Sherry was, the peep show girl, which, honestly, I don't think they ever gave her name. The name, the only reason I know her name is Sherry is because the subtitles told me her name was Sherry. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, he brought her some food, an apple, for the most part, and he chains her so she can eat. And she tells him, and she's like, well, why don't you eat? She asks, did you already have your Christmas dinner or something like that? And he's like, what do you mean by that? And it's like, well, it's Christmas. And of course he has the whole fucking, oh, I hate Christmas, fucking Grinch or Scrooge or whatever, Granted, he has a somewhat reasonable reason for hating Christmas, I guess, but we'll get to that soon here, don't you worry. But then she starts to try to, remind him of, oh, well, think of how Christmas was when you were a boy. And he has, kind of a psychotic break or whatever you want to call it, when she tries to remind him of how Christmas was when he was a boy. Because he just kind of starts, holding his head in his hand and, screaming, stop it. And she's, describing all the things. And this distracts him enough to the point where he's he's got his head in his hand, so he can't really see what's going on. So she grabs a plank of wood that I guess just happens to be in this bedroom, because sure, why not? Smacks him with it and tries to escape. Now, the first time she tries to escape, she tries to open the door, and he's like, oh, I have the key and you can't get out, but you're inside home, you can just unlock the door from inside the home. Which I guess is how she gets out in a second, because, she throws the chains at him, because she was holding her chains for whatever reason. Throws them at him, and that, distracts him enough to where she can run out the door now, because even though the door was locked and they played it off as if you couldn't get out of the door, now she can get out of the door, I guess. Sure, why not? So they have a little pursuit on the stairwell of this apartment building, I guess it is. And one of the little landings between the floors, he finally tries to strike her with the chain. The chain gets wrapped around the railing, and she's able to pull it through the other side of the railing and fling him over the rails and onto the ground below. So he lands all the way at the bottom floor, and she runs down to go check on him, but he starts to sit up and attack her once again, so I guess he's alive. Doesn't matter though, because then we go to a scene where Harris seems to be having a dream, and he's like tossing and turning in bed. We can like see him like struggling in the bed. We get a little flashback sequence here. Or perhaps it's more of a nightmare that Harris is having, I guess. Anyways, in this nightmare, or flashback, or where the fuck it is, we discover that Giles, when he was younger, walked in on his dad cheating on his mother while wearing a Santa Claus costume. Basically, his dad was, getting nasty with a Santa Claus costume. While wearing a Santa Claus costume, I should say. And, then the dad and his mother get into an argument or a fight or something. I guess. They don't really say that, but that's the only way I can figure. And she's thrown down the stairs, the mother, and killed. So I guess that's why he hates Christmas, is because his dad cheated on and, I guess, killed his mother. We don't ever see his dad actually shove the mom down the stairs. It's just kinda, I guess, implied. Because his mom comes in too and sees what he sees, because she walks in, sees what he's seeing, hides his eyes, and walks him out the door. Then you hear like some very indistinct yelling, like you can't make out the words, and then they just show his mom flying down the stairs and like hitting her head on the wall and I guess dying. So sure, why not? Yeah, it's more or less implied. Anyway, so that's why he hates Christmas, and I guess it makes kind of some sense. It's so kind of dumb, but it makes sense, I guess. And then Harris awakens from the dream, and he goes out to his little, living room, living room, wherever the fuck it is, and he sees that present that he received earlier in the movie, and we're the one that said do not open until Christmas. So he decides, well, it's Christmas, and I just barely woke up, so why not go ahead and unwrap it, He unwraps the package, and inside there's a letter, or a card rather, reading, "Present from your loving brother." And inside the package is a little music box with a little dancing Santa Claus. So he opens it up, lets the music start to play, places it down the desk. He goes over to sit in his little reclining chair, and not long after he's already taken his seat, the music box explodes. And I guess we're to assume it kills him, because it shows him falling out of the chair and kind of see some little almost immediate burn scars. Looked like maybe it's kind of just a flash, but I couldn't know for sure. But either way, we assume he's dead, and the credits start to roll. Also, not a bad ending, I would say, to this weird film, but I don't know, it's kind of a messy film. The killing scenes just are kind of there. I get that, yeah, it's a slasher film, they're gonna have killing scenes. Duh, I love slasher films, don't get me wrong. But this is a strange one, because it's not very good, and it's like I said earlier, if you want to do a slasher film right, you need to have characters that we care about, because then when they do die, we feel it even more as an audience, because you start to root for them to make it. Or maybe you start to root for them to die, because if they're being really stupid, and you're like, I can't deal with this idiot, just please take care of him, Freddy, or Jason, or Chucky, or whoever, So either you're rooting for the killer, or you're rooting for the victims to make it out and not be victims. But it just doesn't work with this movie. So I don't even know if I would really call this a slasher, to be honest. I don't even know if that's really what it's classified as, but it feels just poorly executed. Because in any film where there are killings, regardless if it's a slasher or not, you have a connection to the characters. They're not all just a bunch of random drunk strangers who just appear whenever the fucking time is right. Even in the Saw franchise, you know who these characters are. You learn about their backstory. You figure out, their personalities. You get time to understand them as a person and either root for them or root against them. Whereas in this film, it's just, here's a Santa Claus. He gets stabbed in the gut. He's dead now. Next scene. And honestly, you could take the scenes out if you wanted to, and the film would still be coherent enough for you to understand. Because the scenes, or if you rearrange the different killing scenes, and it still wouldn't fucking matter. Because they have no fucking connection to what's happening in the plot. Other than the fact that, yes, they are Santa Claus murders that are happening in this story. But, it just feels so utterly pointless to even show if it wasn't for, the idea that this is about a man killing Santa Clauses. Anyways, that's enough rambling about this, I suppose, because I could talk forever about how this kind of film should be done. But as for what it is, it's kind of boring. It's kind of boring. It's kind of somewhat interesting, story, but not really, because not a lot really. But it's still, I don't know. I would say it's not really worth your time, personally. There's a reason it's rated 2 out of 10 on IMDb, I suppose. But yeah. If you do want to check it out, once again, it's on Shudder. Feel free to do it. But I highly suggest you check out something else. A little something I'm going to be checking out next time in here. So, next time, we're going to be looking at the cult classic, the original Black Christmas from 1974. Not any of the remakes, just the first one. This film is credited as being one of the first films to popularize the slasher genre. So, I would say definitely check that out. It's on Shudder, it's on Tubi. It's honestly a classic as far as horror fans are concerned, I would say. Tune in next time to hear us talk about it here, discuss all my viewpoints on it, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, be sure to give me a follow here on Spotify for more content coming your way. I'm sorry that this episode is a little late this time. It's a busy season right now, with the holidays going around and whatnot. But we're getting used to our schedule here, so bear with us. Anyways, follow me on here for more content. Follow me on Twitter at BFE Podcasts, where you can see some updates I post with a chance. Honestly, Twitter is kind of a dying platform, so I may use a different platform eventually, so we'll see what happens. But until next time, I'm Enigma, signing off. Merry Christmas.